the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you're answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
The Stevens Institute of Technology is proud to present the Hugo New Corporation Sustainability Seminar Series, co-sponsored by Geocentric Consultants, H2M Architect Engineers, Brown & Codwell, and BEM Systems.
All right, thank you, Dr. Sarkar, and thank you also for having me here. This is really exciting. Pretty crazy to be on this side of it. As I said, I've been on that side for 2.5 years or so, so it's pretty cool to be here today giving you this presentation. So the title of the presentation is Sustainability at Stevens, Your Potential Impact. I'm essentially going to be stepping you through my 2 capstone projects in the Sustainability Management Program. The group project where we developed a sustainability management plan for Stevens, and then my individual project where I developed a proposal for establishing an Office of Sustainability here at Stevens. Just acknowledging my other group members, Cole, Wesley, and Zeren. Obviously they're not here, but they were instrumental in the group project effort as well. So a little bit of what we're going to talk about today, tell you a little bit about myself, then I'm going to introduce you to the plan, explain a little bit of how it was developed, what it looks like. Then we're going to talk about the different areas of focus that it covers, some case studies that are discussed within it. Then walking into the Office of Sustainability proposal, what I did to create that, the research I did, and the conclusions I came to. And then some next steps in like how you can take all of this stuff that we've put together and bring that into the next level, bring it into realization, and the things that are currently going on here for you to get involved with. And hopefully, if we have time, some open discussion on the things that we'll talk about. So about me, I graduated in Stevens this past May. I got my Bachelor's of Engineering in Environmental Engineering, my Master's in Sustainability Management. While I was at Stevens, as Dr. Sarkar mentioned, I was one of the co-founders of the Stevens Sustainability Coalition with Frank and Alex. And I was the president of the Stevens Environmental Engineering Professional Society, which is a professional society for the engineers here in environmental engineering, covering a variety of different professional societies like American Water Works Association and Water Environment Federation and so on. I was also very involved with SAVE over time and a lot of other sustainability initiatives going on. This past July, I started as a sustainability analyst for the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, where I basically help our projects incorporate sustainability metrics and goals into their infrastructure projects. So these are like drinking water supply, wastewater treatment, things like that. New York City is the New York City DEP, is the water and wastewater utility for the entire city. So there's a lot of infrastructure involved with that, a lot of things that need to be updated, and we're able to do some really cool sustainability work through that. Just a disclaimer, this is not going to be focused on my work at DEP. I'm really just going to focus in on what I did at Stevens. So as I said, if you have any questions for me about my job later, I'm happy to stick around and talk. So just to introduce you to the plan, this is the title page here. It might be a little difficult to see, but just to give you an idea, the majority of the plan is the sustainability management plan that was prepared by the group. And then there's this addendum for a proposal for an Office of Sustainability. So what is a sustainability management plan anyway? I wanted to kind of throw that out there and see what you guys are even thinking when I say that. Does anybody care to comment on what that might mean to them? Yeah.
I guess like sort of a basic framework that we're
Okay.
moving toward a direction
Mm-hmm.
of being sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Chris.
Sustainability management plan would be more of an integrated approach rather than just haphazardly slapping together, all right, here's one plan for electricity consumption, one plan for the heating, cooling, one plan for the water, the gray water, the black water.
Sure.
You put them all together and you figure out, all right, what is this building going to take to power? What is this building going to emit? And where can we have improvements?
Sure. So it's a very comprehensive look at these things. Anybody else? Yeah.
I imagine it has long-term goals and metrics with those goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely you want some quantitative and qualitative components to that. Yeah.
Maybe even go so far as to include like divestment from companies, corporations that might implement this working with.
So financial aspects as well. Yeah, these are all great answers. So kind of to talk about the purpose of this plan, it's not to provide a comprehensive inventory. This is not a sustainability report. It's a management plan. So that's a very clear point that I try to make in the written plan, just to recognize already a lot of things are outdated. It was 4 months ago, and I'm reading through it yesterday, and I was like, yeah, this has changed. It's also not to outline formal goals and strategies that Stevens is taking, endorsed by the administration. It's important to remember that this was a class project by students. As much as we engaged the administration in this, this was written by students, and we definitely recommend that administration takes what we said and implements it, but it's not signed off by them in any way. The purpose of the plan is, however, to provide a glimpse into what's currently going on at Stevens and identify some areas for improvement from our perspective, to provide a baseline for future conversations like this one and initiatives related to sustainability. And lastly, to expand the discourse of sustainability at Stevens, and I'll talk more about that later when we get into the case studies. Additionally, the need for this plan comes along at a pretty integral part in Stevens' history. So Stevens has been identified as a university on the rise via several metrics, most notably by the U.S. News & World Report Best Colleges through its 17-point ascent that it had in recent years. And that was really written into our progress report through our strategic plan. And I basically am going to be indexing everything in this report to the strategic plan, something that's really important driving Stevens forward, and I want this sustainability management plan to be incorporated into that. Additionally, Stevens has been recognized as a Hoboken Green business, and we want to uphold that certification. We were also listed on the Princeton Review Guide to Green Schools in 2017, but not 2018. So we want to get back on that list. We want to show that we are striving for sustainability. And lastly, we have the Association for Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, or ASHE, and their STARS tracking system, which is Sustainability Tracking, Assessment, and Rating System. This is kind of the premier sustainability rating system for higher education. Stevens was awarded a Silver Award back in 2015, and then that award lapsed in 2018, and now we have the ASHE Path to Gold Committee, which is looking to get us recertified into gold. So this is a big initiative that's going to be pushed in the coming years, and this plan can really help us manage that push. As I mentioned, the Stevens Strategic Plan has 5 strategic priorities that I really thought was important to keep throughout this whole plan. So those 5 priorities are student centricity, through collaboration impact, excellence in all we do, technology at our core, and strength and reputation, increase prestige. You'll see throughout the plan, these priorities are brought up. I created these 5 little icons that are included throughout the plan, as well as throughout the presentation you'll see as we go through case studies, where I'm basically showing how each of these sustainability initiatives or projects are connected to at least 3 of those priorities. So why does sustainability matter to Stevens? Because it's helping us advance on these 5 priorities. So the structure of the plan, when we get into the actual body of the report, we're going to have each section is going to identify strategic priorities, as I mentioned, and then it's going to go into the current status and ongoing projects in that section. And there we'll talk about available data and benchmarking, as well as give you a glimpse into ongoing projects and initiatives. Then we talk about areas for improvement, which are essentially the recommendations that the project team is making to Stevens. The things that we've identified could be future projects and initiatives. And lastly, to give a holistic approach to this, we left a section for limitations. So these are the barriers to improvement that we saw through our meetings with administration and other students, things that are kind of preventing progress, just to give us a really good idea of why these things haven't happened yet, and if you want to take this up, what you might face as a challenge. So this is an idea of what one of those sections looks like. This is the title page for section 1, energy usage. And then these are the 3 subsections within energy usage: energy efficiency, clean energy, transportation demand management. The whole plan I tried to make very readable and usable so that you can just open it up, and if you have a certain interest, you can go to that section, you can just read about that. You don't have to read this whole 75-page document. You can really zero in on what you're looking for. And then each subsection, so again, campus energy usage, subsection energy efficiency, is going to have a title page like this, where it's going to give a little blurb, then it's going to talk about the 3 strategic priorities, and then on the next page it'll go into ongoing projects, recommendations, and limitations. So what would you guys say are some important areas to focus on for sustainability at Stevens? I already gave you 1, energy efficiency. Anybody want to think of some other ones that you would want to see covered? Yeah, good.
Waste management.
Waste management, definitely.
I was going to say water, so that's...
Water, absolutely. Yeah. Chris?
Diversion of food from landfills, so that would be used, like, so they don't create more methane. Like,
Yeah.
they separate foodstuffs out of the trash.
Definitely food waste. Same here.
HVAC.
HVAC, yep. Alex?
Transparency, so financial transparency in particular.
Financial transparency. Yeah, these are all great. So the areas of focus that we identified, the 4 main sections are campus energy usage, waste, water, and land management, social engagement, and financial responsibility. Each of those are broken up into 2 to 3 subsections. So energy efficiency, clean energy, transportation demand management all falls under campus energy usage. Water, waste, and land management, we talked about waste diversion, water management, and land management. Social engagement, we're looking at diversity and inclusion, health and wellness, and sustainability education. I mentioned earlier that one of the purposes of this report is to expand the discourse of sustainability at Stevens. And I talk about this a lot in the report, but throughout my time at Stevens, anytime I mention sustainability, people seem to associate that with environmentalism. And a large point I wanted to drive home in this plan is sustainability is not environmentalism. It's a lot bigger than that. And this is where we're looking at social and financial aspects of sustainability. And then financial responsibility, talking about sustainable investment and some green purchasing standards. So diving into some case studies here. First off, in campus energy usage, I want to highlight the LED lighting upgrades project. This is one of those where I was like, oh, we said it was happening this summer. I don't know what the status of it is right now, but an example of how this is already something that's kind of outdated in the plan. Yeah, Frank.
So, not to interrupt you.
Please,
Angela,
please.
but it's great to be here. It's good to see you again. The LED project was approved. We just received our incentive approvals for the project, and we're meeting with our vendor tomorrow.
Great.
And we think phase 1 will be getting underway by the end of the month.
That's great news. Yeah. Example of how this is not a static document. You know, we want to see this continue to be updated and used by administration and students because things like this are continually. Oh yeah, sure. Frank, you want to introduce yourself, I guess?
I'm Frank LaCastro. I'm Assistant Vice President for Facilities and Campus Operations here at Stevens, and I want to thank Professor Sakar for inviting me here tonight. And I had the great pleasure and a lot of fun working with Angelo and his team on this project last semester. So it was great learning for them and for me. So it was a two-way street. So great to be here.
Thanks, Frank. Okay, so yeah, LED lighting upgrades essentially, as it's written in the report, phase one apparently was just approved, which is really exciting, and it equates to annual energy reduction of about 1.2 million kilowatt hours, which is approximately $140,000 in annual savings. So this is sustainability in an environmental aspect as well as a financial aspect, because they're saving a lot of money in campus operational expenses. And then phase two is following phase one, obviously, another $93,000 in annual savings approximately. As I said, those strategic priorities are showing up everywhere, right? So we've got 3 identified that are connected to just LED lighting upgrades themselves. Excellence in all we do. I would say this is connected because we want to have the best facilities, right? If we want to be excellent in all we do, that means that that's our physical facilities as well. And LED lighting is the best technology available, so we should have that, which leads into technology at our core. Having outdated fluorescent lighting doesn't really show a tech-savvy university, so those LEDs are pushing us there. And then strengthen reputation, increase prestige. Almost all sustainability rankings are looking at your campus energy usage. So LED lighting is a simple way that we can knock that down a lot. Wastewater and land management. I'm going to focus in on recycling a little bit here. So standardization of campus recycling infrastructure. This is something that I heard about almost, I feel like, every day through my 5 years at Stevens, was that the recycling bins were all over the place. No one really knew if it was actually being recycled, and they weren't really sure how to recycle here on campus. So we're basically proposing standardizing all indoor and outdoor bins, just to make it a lot easier for users to recycle. And highlighting, and this was included as an appendix to the plan, project management fundamentals course that I took in the fall. We actually developed a plan to roll out replacements of all indoor recycling bins and standardize all of that, and we estimated about $100,000. This is just all ballpark figures, just kind of spitballing things, and we suggested maybe this could be sourced from the savings of the LED project. Now, my understanding is that's kind of already allocated into something else. You know, I don't really know how the financial side of things works too much on the internal side of Stevens, but this is just proposing the idea of a green revolving fund, where sustainability projects that save money can then use those savings to fund future sustainability projects. It's something that's been proven to work really well at a lot of other schools, and something that I think would be a great application here at Stevens. Again, those 3 priorities: excellence in all we do, through collaboration, impact, and strengthen reputation, increase prestige. I don't want to go through all of it every single time, but just quickly, like collaboration and impact, if we are all working together to provide the best recycling infrastructure here at Stevens, then we are really a big waste generator. And imagine if we were able to raise our waste diversion just 5%. That's a big deal. And strengthen reputation, increase prestige. Stevens actually placed 42nd, I believe, in Recyclemania for waste diversion, and 16 for the per capita classic. So Recyclemania is a big competition that happens in the spring, and we did pretty well, but there's a lot of room for improvement, and we want to be really showing up on the top of those lists. So this is a way that we might be able to improve those numbers. Social engagement. You may have heard of this intercultural center. This is a really cool idea that is being proposed by the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Before I get too much into that project, I want to talk a little bit on a broader scale, the idea of social engagement here at Stevens and diversity and inclusion. There is so much I could talk about on this subject. Stevens is doing a crazy amount of things. There's like half a page bulleted list in the report of all the initiatives going on. And this is not comprehensive at all. But one of the concerns that we identified in my interviews with different students and administrators on campus is this idea of intersectionality. This is a term that was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, and it basically is defined as the interconnected nature of social categorizations, such as race, class, and gender, as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. What does that all mean? Essentially, someone who has a certain race, gender, religion, and so on might not identify exclusively with one group. They feel like they belong to a variety of things or the overlapping combination of those. While sometimes at Stevens we may see there's the Korean Student Association, there's the Chinese Student Association, and so on, right? There's specific LGBTQ plus groups. And what about someone who feels like they fit into multiple of those categories? There's not really a overarching place for them to go. And this intercultural center aims to solve that by providing a physical space for people to go for those resources regardless of the buckets that we try to put them in, basically. It's basically recognizing the person as the whole person, their entire individuality, and not the ways that we kind of define them. And providing this space would really help tackle these concerns. And this is really exciting that it's been temporarily approved for the Alexander House, and we hope to see this roll out more permanently in the future. If you're interested in this, definitely get in touch with the Diversity and Inclusion Committee of the SGA. They're really great, pushing a lot of really cool initiatives. For social engagement, I also wanted to highlight this idea of mandatory training modules. So last year there was discussions on mandating training for faculty on mental health and suicide prevention. And this plan kind of says, let's take this a little bit further and think about mandating this for all members of the Stevens community. Now bear with me for a second. Imagine if every member of the community was aware of ways to identify concerning behavior in their peers and the services that are available to them at Stevens. Imagine what we could do in promoting the mental health of our students, preventing suicide, things like that. I think that this is a really great opportunity for us to look at becoming really prioritizing these things here on campus. And one of the limitations that we identified for mental health and suicide prevention here on campus was this kind of double standard between course load and self-care that students talk about all the time. It's this idea that everyone's telling us, get enough sleep, take care of yourself, eat healthy, yet our courses don't allow us the time to do so. So what we suggested in the plan is maybe just a better line of communication between the faculty and like CAPS, for example, counseling and psychological services, for when a student needs that extra time, that the faculty can be a little bit more understanding in giving that leeway. Financial responsibility. I want to highlight one project here related to sustainable purchasing standards. Before I get into the exciting thing that's actually going on, I want to take a step back for a second to make a pretty important point about this. You're all probably familiar with the plastic bag reduction campaign that's been going on in Hoboken and therefore applies to Stevens as we exist in Hoboken. And that was a really awesome rollout that they did, and it's made a lot of progress in reducing single-use plastic bags. And then last year we had this plastic straw ban on campus here, where actually all the cafes replaced their plastic straws with paper straws. Now, this was a great idea, but the problem is they didn't do anything to the cups, and the lids for those cups are made for plastic straws. So when you put a paper straw in that cup, the sides puncture the paper straw, and then your drink goes everywhere, and everyone's upset. And no one likes paper straws anymore. It's understandable why this wasn't too successful. And the problem that we kind of identified was this wasn't taken from a systems approach. If we looked at it as a whole system, we would recognize that maybe the lid also needed to be replaced to have a open, just without anything to puncture the paper straw, basically. That would have been more useful. So the recommendation here is to replace all of the single-use products on campus with these Emerald brand products, which Frank has done a lot of work with, and it's really exciting. It's basically biodegradable, tree-free products like paper towels, compostable plates and cups and things like that. And the point that I'm making is just when we look at rolling any new products out, think about it from a systems perspective. How are those products going to interact with the existing infrastructure on campus to make sure it's done in the most sustainable manner? All right, this is just a little summary of all the recommendations of the report. If you don't feel like reading through the whole thing, you can skim all the way back to the conclusion section, and all of these guys are listed out. Just to give you a little idea of some of the things that are talked about: climate control systems, continuous replacement of fleet vehicles. You've seen the little green truck that's driving around campus, more electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, replacement of gasoline-powered landscaping equipment, standardization of recycling bins, we talked about that, food waste, capturing roof runoff to use for irrigation. There's a lot of really great stuff going on with perennial planting beds to make their more native plants and perennial instead of annuals. Social engagement, talking about diversity and inclusion, health and wellness trainings, expanding campus medical offerings. One thing I talked about was if we could offer like flu shots on campus, that would be much more accessible, especially to students living on campus who might not want to go off campus to get those things. And financial responsibility, basically leveraging the business schools technology and their capabilities to look into sustainable investment and environmental, social governance, ESG metrics for our investment portfolio. So the overarching conclusions of the sustainability management plan. We identified there are significant barriers to progress on a lot of these initiatives. And a lot of times the approach that we're taking is kind of disjointed. There's a lot of different people working on different parts of it, and it's not always the most efficient approach. Student-led groups that we've had are ultimately temporary and unsustainable because students are here for 2, 4, 5, however many years. I have a friend who's here for 7, and he's still here, still going strong. He works here now. And then we have administrative committees, such as the original ASHE committee, which sometimes tend to be a little too focused to achieve the level of change we need. And we're saying to resolve all of those things, we recommend establishing an Office of Sustainability, which can overcome those barriers to progress. It can provide a more unified and efficient approach. It can utilize student groups when they're active and when they're not. It can continue to push those initiatives. And it can leverage the pushes that administrative committees have and push that towards a more sustainable long-term change. So moving into that, the Office of Sustainability. Again, this is kind of what's happening right now. Everybody's like, no, it's your job, no, it's your job, no, it's your job. And an Office of Sustainability is the person who goes right in the middle and says, it's me, I'll take care of it, I'll organize it, we'll figure it out. Of sustainability programs at 6 of our benchmarking schools. So schools that are similar in size, similar in programs like engineering schools, similar in area, so East Coast. And I looked at what they were doing for sustainability. This was really cool. I was just like researching sustainability programs for like a whole weekend, and it was really exciting. Task 2 was to perform a quantitative analysis of ASHE STAR scores for those same 6 benchmarking schools. This gives us an idea of, based on the sustainability programs that they have, are they actually scoring higher than us in ASHE? Because this is the premier quantitative tool that we have to measure that progress. Task 3 was to compile this information on relevant supporting case studies. So these were schools that weren't exactly benchmarking schools, but I thought would be good examples to include. Task 4, identify and compare alternatives for how we would establish an Office of Sustainability, then perform a cost-benefit analysis for those alternatives, and ultimately prepare an organizational model to propose for the preferred alternative. So qualitative benchmarking. These are the 6 schools. First, I looked at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. They have an independent Office of Sustainability that has direct links to the Facilities Department, the CFO, and a Sustainability Advisory Committee. They've made a lot of progress in sustainability. They have a lot of really great reports, commitments, and programs going on at their school. So they were a great example to look at. Carnegie Mellon University has a single environment coordinator within the Division of Facilities. Based on the jobs that they do, it's equivalent to a sustainability coordinator. They also have a research outlet, an academic outlet for sustainability that has made a lot of progress as well for the school. Lehigh has a really robust Office of Sustainability within business services. Like there's somewhere on at least 15 different employees, tons of student interns. They do a lot of really cool stuff. And then RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, has a senior sustainability advisor to the president, which I equated to kind of like a VP level person, someone on the president's cabinet, as well as a position in student auxiliary services, kind of like student affairs and stuff, that does sustainability and conservation. Case Western Reserve University has an Office of Energy and Sustainability within facilities. It works with facilities and has an arm to do a lot of other initiatives on campus. they had a really cool thing that was exciting to read about that was basically a intentional living community for sustainability, and it's like students lived in this house, lived the most sustainable way that they could, and were actually had the power to make changes to that house, propose like physical upgrades to the house to make it more sustainable, which is a pretty cool idea. And then RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic, does not have a formal administrative role linked to sustainability, but has an active student sustainability task force. This is kind of similar to the point we're at now, where we have the SSC just established. But the Student Sustainability Task Force has been around for, I want to say, about 10 years. And is really interesting kind of glimpse into the future of Stevens if we continue on the path we're on right now without an administrative role. They've made a lot less progress than these other 5 schools. I couldn't help but identify the differences. Yeah.
Want to tell us like how you identified these benchmarking schools?
Yeah, so it's basically based on, as I said, like engineering schools. A lot of them are in this area. A lot of them have similar, some have like similar endowments, some have similar student body size. In the report, I have a standardized table that's basically the metrics of those schools for each of them. So kind of justifying these were relevant schools to look at. They're not just picked out of a hat, the best schools that I could think. Quantitative benchmarking. So Stevens is the yellow box. You can see that for our ASHE scores, we were below all of the other schools in the 4 main categories, except we beat Lehigh in operations by 0.06 percentage points. Pretty insignificant. It's also notable that Rensselaer Polytechnic is not on this list. They do not have a formal ASHE rating. The Student Sustainability Task Force performed a full ASHE analysis, but because they don't have an administrative role, they weren't actually able to submit for a rating. So just another example. Students are great. They can get a lot done in the time they're here, but it's ultimately unsustainable. And I actually reached out to the current president of the Student Sustainability Task Force at RPI, and she expressed that same sentiment, that they've been proposing an Office of Sustainability for years, telling the administration that they needed help with this, and they were having a lot of trouble getting traction on it. So just an interesting point to make. Selected case studies. I looked at 4 other schools that, based on the metrics that I used for those other 6, aren't really benchmarking schools, but were useful case studies. Northeastern University, they have an Office of Energy and Sustainability directly below the Associate Vice President for Facilities, Operations, and Services. So this was a good example of an organizational structure that I was interested in for one of the alternatives. Montclair University is a good example of funding. They have a research institute for sustainability studies that was funded with a 3-year $1 million grant to support sustainability research. They have a ton of different research programs going on. They have like summer green teams of students, and they do a lot of really cool stuff there. So that's a good way to show how having like an administrative outlet might help us to get more sustainability research on campus, which was identified in our strategic plan as one of our core pillars. Cornell and College of the Atlantic identified as gold standards for sustainability. So Cornell is consistently ranked as the #1 Ivy League school for sustainability. They have an expansive Office of Sustainability. Alex went to Cornell and has told me a lot about the cool stuff that they do there. They have tons and tons of initiatives that have been really successful. And then College of the Atlantic, that was a really exciting school to look at. Not really similar to Stevens in any way whatsoever. I think there's about 350 total undergrad students there. It's a really tiny school in Bar Harbor, Maine, and they have one major, which is something to do with ecology. So the kind of school you'd expect to be #1 in sustainability. But one really cool thing that I was noted when I was reading through their sustainability website, they identified when looking at motion sensors to use for lighting in classrooms and hallways and such, based on the pilot studies that they did, they determined that motion sensors weren't actually necessary in their classrooms because the community was that diligent in turning off the lights. So just an example of how a culture shift towards sustainability, living more sustainably, can actually be the most effective way that we can do something like this. Not to say motion sensors aren't useful. So the three alternatives that I identified, no action alternative, essentially this would fail to capitalize on all these opportunities that we've identified and continues the same approach that we have going on. Alternative 2 would be to establish a position of a Vice President of Sustainability on the President's Cabinet. This is similar to RIT's Senior Sustainability Advisor. And this would work really well across high-level administrative offices. I noted that RIT had a lot of really cool like campus-level commitments, but not a lot of really engaged initiatives with the students. So it doesn't really work well on the lower level with students and faculty and other community members. And then the third alternative was to establish an Office of Sustainability within the Division of Facilities and Campus Operations with a single person as a Director of Sustainability. This would really leverage the current state of sustainability, working relationship between facilities and the students, academics, and other administrative offices. And it would provide a direct line to Frank, the Associate Vice President, and Mr. Bob Mafia, the Vice President of Facilities, which would give us that connection to the President's Cabinet and higher level commitments and initiatives. So doing a brief cost-benefit analysis, I didn't go into a lot of really big detail. Alternative 1 was no cost, no benefits, pretty simple. Alternative 2 would be a cost of a VP level salary and a small operating budget, which we estimated at about $300,000 annual. And some benefits would be realized, but doesn't really optimize everything that we're talking about. And alternative 3 is the cost of a director level salary and a small operating budget, estimated at about $150,000 annually. Most of the benefits would be realized. A lot of these initiatives could be taken up by this person. It would utilize the existing infrastructure in the facilities department, the existing working relationships, and therefore is the preferred alternative. So the proposed organizational model, just rough ideas to get this idea out there, get conversation going, is to have this Director, Office of Sustainability established right here under Frank, who would be designated as our Chief Sustainability Officer, just to give that real administrative outlet to it, and also recognize him for all the amazing work he's been doing to get sustainability undergoing here on campus. And Frank would be receiving a lot of direction on campus vision and goal setting from Dr. Sarkar and Bob Mafia as the co-chairs of the Sustainability Advisement Committee, which is essentially our Path to Gold committee that's working on the administrative level for these things. And the important thing to note is this director here would then be able to network directly with students, academics, administrative offices, local community stakeholders like the Hoboken Green Team to implement cross-functional projects and initiatives. So, overall conclusions of the proposal. The desired outcome that we were looking for overall was operational cost savings, achievement of new rankings and awards, research grants for academics and sustainability, and a really big improvement on student and public perception for Stevens in terms of our sustainability work. Alternatives 1 and 2 are viable, but don't really amount to complete realization of those benefits, while alternative 3 is definitely the most cost-effective and practical implementation for Stevens based on where we are at this point in time. So, moving on to next steps, where do we go from here, taking that management plan, this proposal, and moving forward. We need to walk the talk, get involved, and share your values. So walk the talk is really important. Again, back to that College of the Atlantic example. If we are promoting a culture that turns off the lights when you leave the room, that's really going to make a big difference here. Get involved. This is really important. Just if administration doesn't know that you want things happening, that you want things changing, they're not going to act on it. You know, they're going to do the things that they need to do. There's a lot of initiatives that I learned that were going on behind the scenes that we didn't even know about. So people are up in arms saying like we're not doing anything, but really we're doing a lot, and you just don't know because you weren't that involved. So get involved and really make an impact through your involvement here. and share your values. Get people talking about these things. This is really important to expand this discourse beyond environmentalism into social sustainability and financial sustainability. So future studies that still kind of need to be done to complete a more comprehensive cost-benefit analysis. This is really just to help strengthen the case for hiring this person. I recommended if I had more time, I definitely would have sat down and gotten interviews with sustainability directors at other schools to see what they recommend, what challenges they're facing. And then ultimately, hopefully, prepare a formal job description for someone as a director of sustainability here at Stevens. So how do you get involved? Next Wednesday. Wednesday night, the 18th at 6:30 p.m. in Babbia 104. The Stevens Sustainability Coalition is going to be having their first forum. Alex and Frank right here are the main co-facilitators for the SSC, and essentially they're going to be establishing this network to get everybody who's interested in sustainability together to share their ideas. Hopefully we can talk about it a little bit more in a minute. Involvement with clubs on campus, I think, is really important. It's going to help you to exercise these ideas and to put the projects that you have in mind into action. SAVE is a great way to do that. I was involved in SAVE a lot. We did this cool thing called Solar Powered Smoothie Cart, which was still going on. I don't know what's up with that, but it was a cool project and got to really experiment with some things. The Campus Community Garden is a proposal that's been going on for a while, and if that really gets pushed through with your involvement, we hope that that'll be an awesome way to get involved here on campus. SGA Campus Life Committee does a lot of sustainability projects as well. There's so many different clubs that you can get involved with. It doesn't have to be a sustainability club to do sustainability projects. You can bring that idea into everything that you're doing. Sustainability Management Program, a lot of you here are in it, but if you're not, you can also look at Green Engineering minor, or even just taking these courses for electives. I took an elective last semester in Sustainable Development. It was an awesome course. I highly recommend it to everybody. It really helped me broaden my thinking on these things and give me a good overarching perspective on sustainable development. And incorporating sustainability into your design projects. So industry is really trending towards this. You're going to start to see a lot of engineering reports coming out with a full sustainability section. I know because I review them. It's my job. And the point is, if you start to practice this now, start to write this into your design projects. This is really kind of directed at undergrads. Master students, you can look at this in your research. This is really going to help you to gain these skills that you're going to use as maybe a consultant in the industry. Finally, as I said earlier, don't be afraid to talk to administration about your concerns. I wish someone told me this a lot earlier at Stevens. How else would they know that we care about these things? I went through so many years at Stevens just thinking like, oh, they're doing their own thing, they don't want to hear from me. And then I sent an email to Frank and they opened their doors and we're sitting down at the table like a week later talking about all these things. So don't be afraid to voice your concerns and get the information from the source. So with that, I'd like to have a little bit of an open discussion. If anybody has any specific questions they want to ask me about the plan or ideas that they want to throw out there, and maybe if we want to talk about the SSC a little bit, yeah. But thank you.
All right.